Have you started recording?
Oh, wow, okay. Whoa, go time.
Are we going? Okay, attempt 1. Oh my phone. Hi, welcome back to the Please Let Us Into Medical podcast. My name's Edward.
I'm Hisham.
Oh, man.
And I'm Amo.
Cool. So today we're talking a bit about shut up. My Alexa went off. We're talking about like the backlog in the NHS after COVID and the effects it's going to have in the next few years. So we all went on the internet for a bit and had a look at some statistics. So who wants to start off?
Well, I suppose we could talk about the current COVID numbers. So
Okay, go for it.
as of today, there have been 3.89 million cases in the UK and 112k deaths, which is quite a substantial number.
Yeah.
Since the start of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So we have the highest number of people on a waiting list right now ever since they started recording the statistics back in August 2007. So we're currently at, in March, it was 436,000 people who have been waiting for more than a year to see a consultant or have surgery, which is higher than it's ever been before. And I've got a quote from this GP, Rosemary Ann Leonard, who was saying that she's been booking patients for 2022 already. And after that, they've been waiting many months or even a year for secondary appointments and surgery. And everything's just really clogged up. So it's not in a great situation at the moment.
So you can find an article on the BMG and basically on the Royal College of Surgeons, basically about managing the status of upcoming surgeries. They describe about how to manage patients and they're describing it as how it's really hard to categorize each category and try and keep up with the patients. Describing it they're basically saying that it's really hard now. You've got, especially in areas of trauma, I think it is, and orthopedics, surgical cases, there's a lot of a backlog. I'm not sure why they're in those categories, but it's quite a lot.
There was one that I kept seeing that was cropping up. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was to do with eye surgery. Yeah. So cataract operations, for some reason, there's a really, really huge waiting line on those. But basically, there's a really good graph on the website.
Sideways.
Why? So basically, there's this really, really good graph that I found on the NHS website, which basically shows how much it's increased. And to compare, there was 3,000 people back in March of 2020 who had been waiting for more than a year for their treatment. And that's just gone, it's literally rocketed. And yeah, we're at 450,000 now, which is just an insane number of people.
Mm-hmm.
And in England alone, nearly 5 million people are now on the waiting list. I think it's 4.9 or something, which is 9% of the entire population is on some sort of NHS waiting list, which is much higher than anything since the records began.
I think the cancer as well. It's it's a disproportionate amount of cancer surgery being pushed for over a month, and even diagnosing it's been a lot of push because people are afraid to go into their GPs. And that's really significant. So I think apparently, so the percentage of patients having cancer surgery within 1 month of its decision to treat cancer has dropped from 92% to 88%.
I remember seeing some stats. It says they're talking about these missing cancer patients. They've got 45,000 in quotes missing cancer patients because what's the reason? There are people who just don't want to go and get treatment because they're scared of COVID and things like that. But because of that, their symptoms and things are getting much worse and worse and worse. And obviously the whole thing with cancer is the earlier you can treat it, the earlier you can diagnose it, the more likely you are to survive. And if you leave it for a longer period, then it's going to be a lot harder for you. So I think they're really worried about those people as well. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, adding on to that, there's been, in April 2020, there had been a 60% fall in numbers of people referred by their GP for cancer. So yeah, it was a 60% fall in numbers from the year before, which is a lot of people not getting the treatment they should be getting.
Yeah. There's a similar trend with dentistry. I saw this study and it said that 97% of the British Association of Private Dentists said that they've been giving less oral oral cancer screens than pre-lockdown figures. And that's really huge because a lot of people don't think of dentists as like having this cancer side, this oncology side. But a lot of the thing with dentistry is you've got like oral cancers, you have like pathogens in the mouth, there's a lot more things than just like your normal dental hygiene. And like a lot of these people might be getting oral cancers, and because of COVID and they're not going to their dentist for their regular checkups, they're not getting screened and checked up for these diseases.
I think what's interesting is how we will deal with it in like the upcoming like 2 years, like the backlog of it all. Like how they're gonna prioritize like cancer people or even like hip replacements over each other. And I think what impact it will have on just the population and how they'll deal with it.
On the 13th of May, the government announced they were giving £160 million towards trying to help with that really huge waiting list. And they were going to, let me see, there's like a list of the things they're going to use the money for. Let me find it. So they were going to try out things like extra clinics at weekends, virtual ones, and new ones that can, they're having specific ones just for those cataract operations, apparently, anyway, which is the ones to the eye, which is really weird. I wonder why the eye surgery must be going up. Maybe it's to do with like the amount of screens we've all been looking at. Maybe that might have an impact on the eye. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there's like certain areas which are being like particularly affected. So as you said, the eye, like cataracts, trauma, orthopedics, oral, as Hashim said, and even plastic surgery is being
And I feel like a lot of things have been put on hold. So, for example, my mum, she has VSD, ventricular septal defect. That basically means she has a hole in her heart, in the septum of her heart. So some blood, oxygenated blood, gets mixed with deoxygenated blood. And what my mum has, it's quite mild, but it can be quite severe in some cases. But my mum is usually screened every year for it, just to like make sure that everything is going okay. But she hasn't had a scan now in over 2 years. So while she is healthy and everything, there are still people who might have it slightly worse than her, who haven't necessarily been getting the scans that they need.
I think that also links with neurosurgery about like even this is from cancer as well, but like tumor that's been treated, but then it could be like growing back. And like within that 2 years, if you don't have them checked up on, it obviously has disastrous consequences. And it's how the NHS will adapt and try and solve it, as you said, Edward. About opening for weekend clinics, virtual ones.
Same with dentistry, because there's a study that 88% of UK dental health experts think that the UK oral health would be worse after this whole COVID pandemic, probably because there's like less routine checkups and stuff like that. So a lot of like small problems that can be fixed and like demineralization in the enamel that can be fixed really easily with fluoride treatments and things like that. And because people are not going as often to the dentist, then things might progress too far to be treated, and then people will need cavities and like tooth restoration, and that's not the most ideal treatment course.
Yeah, it's the small problems becoming the big problems. I think that's like throughout the whole of medicine, sort of. It's like initially, if before COVID, like small problems could be treated, but now because of obviously COVID and like you just can't go to your local GP and have it checked up on or have it treated. The small problems are becoming to big problems, and I think it's going to. I think that will be a big problem about how they'll try to get staff back towards those small problems without.
I feel like these days. I feel like these days it's a lot harder to like get an appointment with a GP because most things have to be done virtually, like either in like a call or something. And it's hard to like book appointments for that, especially if you have, I don't know, poor internet connection and stuff, which is something that's pretty critical these days.
Yeah. How do you guys think the government's handling it? Do you think it's good or it's all right, or like, what do you guys think? What do you not know about it, or?
I think that plays into politics really. It's like how you see it. But like, I think obviously they could be doing a lot better. I think as like a percentage-wise to our population, we are not doing greatly compared to so many other countries with the same like really. So even though the US has a disproportionate amount of more COVID cases and deaths, percentage-wise, we're doing a lot worse. And why is that? Like some people are saying it's due to the state of the NHS, and although that's certainly true, could we have done? Is the management of it? Could the management of it been a lot better?
What do you guys think about what's going to happen in the future with the NHS? Like, do you think there's going to be a big change after this? I mean, I think there is anyway. It seems like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a long time to get back on track. Especially because, like what we've been saying, there's been so much backlog over this last year. It's going to take a while for us to recover from that, especially like from an NHS point of view.
Yeah.
I saw an article somewhere about, especially I think it was to dentistry, and how local GPs, and how so I think American private contractors are coming in to take up the GP contracts.
Yeah.
And I think in local communities, obviously, that's not great, because I think you're sort of proud of the NHS. Well, we all are. It's like a national pride, and the fact that it's being converted over to like private contractors, I think is a major deal. I think the NHS like highlights that, and like the government, like management, and how much financial backing is being given to NHS.
I think there's also some things to learn from COVID. Like, I personally had a good experience with the GP. Like, I know they were really like busy and things like that, but I quite liked the online aspect, which was something I didn't have before. I could easily write up like what I needed, gave me a call, and straight up I could go to the pharmacy and pick up my prescription. Like, I think like new technologies and new solutions have been found because of COVID. Like, there's obviously a really like negative aspect, but there are a few things that we've picked up.
Positives, like silver lining,
I think they've learned how to cope with it, and for the future, they obviously learn different ways that they can cope and solve issues.
I think for dentistry, a massive change has been all the PPE that's been introduced, and all the things that have been introduced to try and reduce the risk of COVID. Like, you have really long fallow times in between patients, and that's made it really hard to fit in patients into a dentist's day. So they're seeing a lot like fewer patients, but and you have all these FFP3 masks, I think they're called, and they're all fit checked and everything like that. So there's a lot of protection and things like that, and a lot of that is new, and I think some of that might be useful to stay, because there's always going to be viruses and things like that, and we need to protect our medical people more.
Yeah. I remember right at the start of the pandemic, there was a huge problem with PPE, wasn't there? People were saying like nurses kept getting COVID and things like that because they were just giving them the basic sort of almost like surgery masks.
And, or even old ones, the ones they've used like that previous day. I think, as I said again, I think like you read a lot of stuff on the internet and like different articles, different points of view about how the government could do this or do that. I think it really depends on your point of view.
Yeah.
Especially.
And none of us were actually there. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Continue.
Like, none of us were actually there, and have the power of being able to look to the past and go, okay, well, we should have done this. You can't do that in the moment. You just have to do what you think's right. And I think it definitely felt like they were trying their best. So I think at the end of the day, that's all you can do. We made mistakes. That's right.
And I suppose moving forward, we now know we have a better understanding of how we would deal with something like this on such a large scale.
If it happens again,
yeah.
It's just whether they're going to keep to that. That's going to be the only problem. Whether they're going to look at this as a learning experience rather than put it behind us. I think especially now with the Indian variant coming through.
Yeah.
And now they're just not changing travel restrictions. And that's obviously
it could be really dangerous.
That beforehand. And if the Indian variant does become a massive thing, then it's
such a huge gamble, isn't
pre-warning.
It'd be a great way.
Danger.
Yeah. Because all the vaccination efforts seem to be a success. Like, recently, we've had the in most schools the no mask things in class, so there've been improvements. And if this Indian variant or other variants like make a problem, then all the tens of millions of vaccine doses have been given. That'd be a massive waste, and it'd set us back a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think with what Hershey said about PPE, I think although that's definitely a massive thing in dentistry, but it's also, I think, can translate into surgery as well. Because now, I think obviously it's always a massive issue, like infections and stuff, but because of COVID, it's become even more of an issue. And like ICU beds and all that sort of stuff, it's now like dragging it down. It means that they can only see a certain amount of patients and get through those backlogged areas of surgery that they should have been able to.
No, the NHS website is really good for a lot of the stats. Like it's just really well presented. I know sometimes I was looking at different newspapers and things like that, and the graphs on there were like so misleading, and the scales were all wrong and everything, and it's just you can tell they've been trying to mess with it to sort of help their opinion, which I think it's really important to be able to tell when that's been done.
Yeah,
that's another thing. I feel like there's been a lot of fear mongering, I suppose, towards the start of the pandemic. Like,
definitely,
it's hard to know what's actually like real and what's just been put out there for the sake of being put out there.
And so I found this on the Guardian website. So Professor Derek Alderson, the president of the Royal College of Surgeons in England, this was about a year ago, and apparently even then they were only able to deliver a third of their usual surgical capacity, and that's nearly all for emergency. So the hip replacements, as you said, knee replacements, cataracts, hernias, they've had to put that on hold. And I found a very good statistic for cancer. So approximately 400 cancers a week were being missed because the normal screening was being suspended. And that was just 1 year ago. Imagine how much that has rose, or how many people have been affected by it now.
Yeah.
So I think they still don't know exactly sort of how infectious the Indian variant is, and things like vaccination resistance, things like that. I think they said that so far it's had like positive results, as in like it's not resistant to the vaccine so far, things like that. I think they're still looking into it though. But I remember seeing that on the news.
We all know how quick viruses mutate. Like, we've already had a lot of variants. We've had the South African, we have had the Indian, we've had a lot. So we don't know how the situation will evolve and change.
I think as we see as like COVID has gone on, we see all the age demographic for the number of deaths has gone down. So at the beginning it was quite old people, like retirees, were getting it, and then I think before the vaccines were spread out, around 30-year-olds were getting it. And like if the Indian variant comes, obviously we're not vaccinated yet, so could it be us that our generation will be really targeted by it? And also just the trauma, I think, for the doctors and nurses that I've been dealing with, they've been dealing with it for over a year. It's whether they can keep it all up if the Indian variant does become an issue. I think it's just they've done great. It's just whether
they can keep going,
and whether they have equipment and the support to do so.
Yeah, mental health is a big thing. I think even with a lot of people too, like a lot of people have been through 2-3 lockdowns that haven't been in their normal environment. So it could be a lot harder for a lot of people, especially to get help these times, because a lot of the NHS is focusing on the COVID and also trying to get all these things that are backlogged back to the front. So mental health, that's something that hasn't had that much focus on, like right now, and it hasn't.
I think it's been a huge problem after this. Mental health, and like, I mean, for example, I was watching some interviews with like Australian people, and obviously right at the start they had this huge lockdown. It was like 140 days straight of lockdown. They weren't allowed outside the house. I think they weren't even allowed outside like once a day. I think it was only once a day, and you had to have like a pass to show that you've been outside once a day or something like that. But I remember basically they had a really strict lockdown, and they were saying it completely crushed them, because you're just not going outside. And like naturally as a human being, you need to like see the sun, you need to go outside and get fresh air, or otherwise it's going to have a huge effect on you. And I think even though things like Discord and texting your friends is good, you just can't replace human interaction. And like last episode when we was talking about like sort of using technology and things like that, and saying how although we've learned a lot from COVID and like using technology, at the end of the day I think you still need a lot of human interaction, especially in healthcare, which is such I don't know how to describe it, but like
personal, isn't it?
Somewhere where you just definitely need such a personal, kind of career path.
Yeah, and like the people who live alone have definitely had it worse, because at least with the four of us and like school kids and everything, we've had like our families around us. But people who are living alone, they've had to spend all that time. Like, yeah, there's social media and stuff, ways of staying in contact, but just that complete solitude can really
ruin you. Yeah. And I mean, look, and the waiting lists for mental health things and things like that. It's like they go up to like 18 months. It's huge. It's really, really huge. Yeah.
Wasn't that before the COVID?
It was long before.
It was already very long. Yeah.
Canada's already had a really long time. So now, obviously, with I think the mental strain of having to be through like 2 lockdowns, not seeing anyone, like mental health obviously being a major issue. I think the waiting time will definitely go up.
Definitely, yeah.
This is it for today. Thanks for watching the Plums. I think next week's episode is going to be about UCAT and BMAT, so stay tuned.